Hey fellow DMs, this is Paradox2767 and today I wanted to make an original lair for a specific D&D monster that we're going to use next Sunday when me and my buddies get together to play D&D. I thought this might be helpful for some of you to see my personal process when it comes to building a lair around a specific species. So let's just get right into it. So this is my, DM kind of notebook here that I use every time I plan a session. This is the current planning I'm doing right now. I like to do my own kind of sessions instead of going off of the pre-scripted ones that you'll find in some D&D books. But I feel like this advice might still be relevant to some DMs out there who want to mix it up a little bit. Just to give you an idea, I start each entry with the date, so an in-game date being December 22nd. Let me get that to focus. So in the game it's December 22nd. In the early hours, that's where we're going to start out. And then I give descriptions and scenarios of what all my players might run into in a given week. So it takes me about a day of work to get about, 10 pages of notes every week. Some weeks I have less, but those sessions are usually a little less exciting. So I try to put in the hours and get a decent session planned. One thing I do a lot is I try to plan for certain contingencies. So for instance, what you see in brackets here, here's the start of a bracket all the way to this page right here. That whole chunk there, that's all a contingency if, I think that specific one is if one of my players dies, because they've got a lot of danger coming this coming week. And so if none of them die, that whole part won't even be used. I try to plan for that, and I try to plan for different decisions the players might make within a specific session. This, by the way, has nothing to do with the campaign. This is just an old notebook, and I think someone is using it for German practice or something. But anyway, at this part of the story, the friends are finding themselves approaching the moss-covered hut of an all-new foe. I'm calling her Big Mama Tonathorn. It's spelled like ton-a-thorn. I know it's kind of dumb sounding. I got it from Big Mama Thornton, who sings like Hound Dog. I just switched it up and said Tonathorn because I thought it sounded cool. Anyway, she's a swamp-dwelling nagpaw. Not that anyone in my party knows this yet, but a nagpaw is a kind of a vulture-y, hunched evil critter. I've got all this information from the Monsters of the Multiverse book, which I recommend if you're feeling you're outgrowing the monster manual. And so a nagpie I decided on as a kind of a big bad for this specific area. We're on a planet called Super Onassis, which is going to be populated by only gifts, which are these hippo people. Here, I'll show you those right quick so you can get a kind of picture in your head. So this is the primary population of Super Onassis is going to be these hippo people, but there are a couple other species, and so it's basically a swampland of a country that we're in right now. And how I landed on this as the big bad is if you have this book in specifically, in the back they'll give you different biomes and what creatures you might find there. So if you're in the coastal area, a forest, or in my case, if you're down here in a swamp area. And then I just went, okay, this is the big bad. It's got to be pretty dang strong. So I went to the next page. It gives you the challenge ratings, and I landed on Nagpa because this is supposed to be a very hard enemy. In fact, the whole point of this interaction is not going to be to take on the Nagpa, but to avoid it at all costs. It's kind of a heist mission because the party is trying to steal a specific, they call it the crazy copper coronet. It's a specific instrument that this Nagpa uses that can be used to summon corpse flowers. And so they're going to need to steal that without getting the Nagpa's attention. And today we're going to be building this Nagpa's lair. Okay, so first thing I need to know when I'm building this sort of lair around this Nagpa critter, Big Mama Tonathorn, is what her abilities are, because that might give me some idea of how this lair should be set up. So I haven't looked into any of this yet, so I apologize if we're learning together in real time, but let's just look over their stats real quick. Okay, so you can see the hit points and all that's very high, armor class is very high, so this would be, again, a beast to take on. So the challenge rating, all that, like I said, it's really not my intention to have my players fight. If they decided to run in guns a-blazing and to fight, they'll likely die, but it's not like I would prevent that completely and say, no way, but I'll show you in my notes here how I kind of hint that it's not a good idea. So, for instance, when we're walking up, I have here, right near the end of my notes, as they're approaching the hut of Big Mama Tonathorn, it says, the rotten dripping heads of a dozen dead gifts droop from stakes like a kind of warning fence. And they've already had to fight some gifts, and they're not necessarily the easiest enemies to take on. They're not super strong, but just that alone is a way that I'm going to kind of hint to my party, listen, this is going to be quite a dangerous little area. An NPC already told them at this point in the journey anyway that it's going to be, grab and dash type of deal. You don't want to take on this Nagpa. So I'm not going to worry too much about staff attacks right away because hopefully they won't get close enough to be within range of her staff attack. What's this Deathly Ray business? It's a ranged spell attack, plus 12 to hit, 120 feet range, one target, and it's a ton of necrotic damage. Okay, so that's great to know. So that staff in her hands, if she gets to use the magic on that thing, it's game over basically. And then let's look, I'm specifically interested in the spellcasting. So not too worried about any of those because they're not like the deadlier ones. What I'm really interested is in these more combative spells. Okay, I'm interested in Fireball, in Wall of Fire for sure. What the hell, I'll look up Feeble Mind too. So I'm gonna quick pop on to the good old player's handbook to get a list of spells. Okay, so here's the fireball spell. Bright streak flashes from your pointing finger to a point you choose within range, the range being 150 feet. Okay, that's another high range. So if she can see the spot, it's within range of a fireball attack. When it comes to Wall of Fire, you create a wall of fire on a solid surface within range, which is 120 feet. Again, another high range. That was my main question, is what kind of fiery spells she'll be working with. Feeble Mind reads, you blast the mind of a creature you can see within range, 150 feet, attempting to shatter its intellect and personality. Feeble Mind's freaking OP. That would be terrible to get hit with, because you'd be worthless magic-wise for a 30-day period. So, with all of that, we know that the range of this bad boy is really far, and so if you're seen by the Nagpa, you're basically toast. So let's build a lair for this critter, and we'll do that around that sort of idea. If she sees you, you're totally toast. Okay, so when it comes to planning maps, my absolute saving grace, kind of a life hack, is wrapping paper, because you could probably get a roll at the dollar store for like that very price. And then if you look on the inside of most wrapping papers, they have 1x1 inch grids, which makes them totally perfect for fighting in D&D. That's something you should definitely keep in mind. I don't see that pointed out too many times on these like online play D&D for cheap hacks. So definitely think about getting yourself some wrapping paper, especially if you're going to be looking into the new updated versions of 5e, where I believe grid-based fighting is going to become more important. I hear there's like a lot more emphasis on like the mechanics of pushing, shoving, stuff like that in the new updates to 5e. So a grid might be really important. You should definitely think about getting one. Here you can see how I used it the last session. So basically, I'll roll out this paper, start a new page if you will, and then I'll, with a quick Sharpie, just like quick sketch these battle mats. And it's a great way to get people imagination going. This last time we were on a ship, and so this was like the main deck of the ship. And then there's like a lot of crazy scribbles because like this represented like a swarm of insects one of my players hit. This is a way to get down, so when you go down there's a second deck. They blew a hole in the ship, which is what all this is. So there's a second and third decks down. And the beauty of all this is that it's really cheap and it takes like 10 seconds of scribbling Sharpie to make. And it really gets your players' imaginations going. So let me get to a new fresh little portion of the wrapping paper. I'm not going to chuck this just yet because it's possible I use that coming up, because it will still be, this is a GIF ship and we're still dealing with the GIF. But in the meantime, I will start afresh. Okay, so we've started a new page. Now for my Nagpa, since it basically looks like a giant vulture, I'm going to be temporarily using that giant vulture mini because I don't have a Nagpa mini. So anyway, let's start. Now, I know for a fact that it's going to be kind of a really marshy, crummy sort of beach that my buddies are going to be disembarking on. So let's start with the beach. So I just want to give a sort of natural it doesn't have to be like the flippin' Mona Lisa when you're making these, obviously. This is just going to be representative of their beach. Now, they take a boat here that ends up hiding itself, because it's a magic sort of feather boat situation. It hides itself behind a giant old cypress. And so I'm going to say, here is your giant tree, which I'll represent with like roots. Like I said, you don't have to be a very good artist at all. It just really gets your team in the headspace. And then here, I'm just going to add the little boat, okay? So it's a big old boat. They disembark. They have to like clamber over some cypress roots, and then they have to get on this super muddy beach. Now, the most important part of this whole thing is, of course, going to be the Nagpa's house. So let's just give this a rough circle. I'm going to make it, since my little Nagpa mini is going to be kind of big, I'm just going to make it roughly. I describe it as just like more moss than like building material. It's like so ready to fall over. It's insane. I also mentioned already in my writing on this area that there's going to be a fireplace involved. I'm going to put the fireplace in the middle of the house. And I also decided for some exciting stealth portions, I think I'm going to half the house right around here. And so there's going to be 2 different rooms, kind of like a storage celery area, and then the main area where Big Mama Thorn hangs. And then here is going to be, I'm just going to call this like the fireplace. So got a nice big old warm fireplace for her to kick back and warm her feet. And then I'll put little like flames here so you can kind of tell what the heck is going on, okay? You see how like simple it is, but believe it or not, like that's all it takes for someone to be able to tell when they're walking around. Oh, Big Mama Thorn can't walk through there. Like the theater of the mind is limited when it comes to determining how and what everything moves around in, and so this is a great way to help people picture it. I also know, for instance, now I think that the Nagpas are listed as medium monstrosity, so technically they'd have a smaller little footprint than this giant vulture. However, I'm going to use that giant vulture as inspo anyway and say, okay, Big Mama's a Big Mama. She's going to get a double-wide door. So this is going to be the doorway out right here, okay? So that's how I'm going to signify that, and that's the entrance and exit. I don't think she's going to have a doorway in the storage area, but there will probably be windows to keep the airflow going, okay? Now, speaking of windows, she'll definitely have a few of those, and that's going to be kind of the trickiest part of this, is because she'll be able to check outside at a moment's notice. So I'm going to call this a window, and then I'm going to say here, that's a window, and then I'll say here's a window, a double window, like double wide window here, and then back here's a double window. Now those are looking the same as my doors. Oh, I'm going to put a ventilation window, yeah, just a small little guy up here, high up above crates. Now how this is going to look with a storage cellar, I think I'm going to draw a few boxes of crates and things like that, so it looks kind of messy and crazy. The players will be able to hop on these boxes or whatever, like manipulate them as needed if it comes to that, but just a bunch of crates and things where Big Mama's keeping all of her junk. Magic supplies, but also like, you know, canned ham and whatever the heck else she needs. And then it's going to be an entrance is going to be right, I think right off the fireplace here, okay? So, let me get a new marker color just so I can clearly designate those windows. Okay, I fetched me some blue because I just want to make sure that the party can kind of clearly imagine what's going on here. So that's a blue window, and I'll just like say the light is shining out, so that's what this light will be. Shining out of the blue window, same here. And then this way they'll be able to say, wait, that's not a door, is it? You know, hopefully it'll be able to demarcate it better that way. And then even up here in this little ventilation, there's a little bit of light trickling through. That's kind of the light of the fire maybe poking out. Let me add a little extra ink just so that thick front door is really obvious. Okay, that's the front door. Now, another thing I mentioned, like I said, was all those gift heads on sticks. So that'll be around the entrance. So I'm just going to draw, what would a hippo's head look like? Kind of the mouth and the eye stalks and a little bit of ear. And there's a hippo head, and it's going to be on a pike, and it's going to be dead. So let me populate this area with a dozen of those bad boys. Okay, there are my dozen dead gift heads. I added a little gore on each of them because I thought it made it look more foreboding or whatever. But as you can see, like I said, it's not, they kind of look like sheep or something from up here, but picture like, you know, the little dead eye and the snout of a hippo's head. And so, not the best art in this respect, but still, that's really all you need to like get the point across. And the beauty of this is like when your character's running around, it can't run through this gift head without getting like mush and all brain matter all over it. So that's just nice to know. Now, I've been describing this as kind of like a cypress-filled swamp, so I want to add a few more trees. And these trees will likely be crucial when it comes to hiding from and approaching the house of this Nagpa. And so I'll go like that for a tree. I'm going to darken it, which is what I kind of like to do when it's just like supposed to be like just an obstacle. Like just, there's no way to interact with it. It's just a tree or a giant boulder or a pillar or something. I like to just color black so it's like you can't do anything there. I mean, obviously they could climb the tree, but that's about it. So I'm going to add a few more trees here and kind of strategically think, where could the party hide that makes sense? The real important parts is that she'll be able to look out this window in like a diamond pattern. So if they're behind this tree, they're okay. If they come out here, they're kind of screwed here. And so I'm going to add a few more trees to this plot with that sort of in mind. So here is our swampland populated with a few more trees. I focused especially like where the windows are going to be. So if Big Mama Ton of Thorn is looking out here, and you can hide behind that cypress. You might be okay, or even if she sticks her head out the window. You know, there's a few places to hide around the windows especially, so I focused on that. Now, another idea I just had recently was, what if we populated this with exploding swamp gas? You know, I was thinking about how the Nagpa have these abilities with flame, and so if we put out some spouts of swamp gas that, if they caught fire, would explode, I thought that might be kind of interesting. So I'm going to add these few, like, sort of spouts. Now, this is honestly just in case of emergency, and, you know, the Nagpa just, like, comes charging out of the tower and is raring to go, and starts using flame spells. We're going to want these swamp gases to be avoided at all costs by the party, I'm sure. So let me get this going. I'm going to just draw like a little kind of hexagonal sort of spout, like so. And then I'm just going to, nothing too impressive. And then maybe I'll use red again just to sort of draw this little steaming swamp gas, okay? And I'll let my buddies know, like, you get too close to that bad boy with a spark and the whole thing's gonna pop. Funnily enough, I actually got this idea from the gifts that we've been working with and fighting lately. I'm gonna have the exact same stats for those swamp gas points as I used during the gifts. So on the gift page of my book here, it talks about gunpowder by the keg. Here I'll be using the same stats. So each creature within 20 feet of an exploding keg must make a DC 12 Dex saving throw and take 24 fire damage. I'm going to basically steal this whole stat block for my exploding swamp gas keggy type deals. So let me add a few more of those sort of spouts to further populate the area, and then I think we're pretty much ready to focus on the interior. Now the idea when you're doing these is, I don't want to overpopulate it and make it so crowded that you can barely maneuver as a player. You know, this seems like a decent amount of trees. There's not too many places to hide, so it's not too easy by any respects, but there's still a lot of room to battle and all that. So there is basically the battleground. I colored them red so they were really quickly distinguishable from, you know, the Hippodon heads and things like that. Or not that. Oops, rip. Hippodon's a Pokemon, so that would be sad. I meant the GIF heads. It's still kind of sad, Avi. If I had a green marker, that might have worked better, but, you know, use what you got. Now it's time to populate the inside of this throne area. And so she'll be sitting most of her time in front of the fire. So let's give her a nice wide walker. Gee whiz. Let's give her a nice wide rocker. Okay, so I'm just gonna draw, oh crap. It turns out I'm kind of bad at drawing rockers. Sheesh! Bad at drawing and bad at saying, but I'm gonna call that her little seat. Good enough? I think so. And she's gonna have a little special table here, a crucial table. On that table, I'm gonna be putting her crazy coronet, as signified by a yellow Lego. That is gonna be the payload of this little heist operation situation. So I'm gonna have Big Mama here, you know, like larger than life, and then she'll be sitting with her little coronet, okay? She'll be watching the fire and warming her feet until any sort of sounds alert her to a potential invader. So anyway, besides that, we're gonna have, these are, when she doesn't want to see the sun, which probably happens often, she's gonna have these curtains around each of the windows, okay? I'm gonna draw these. Now, I'm thinking about this in regards to potential hiding places, like in an absolute worst case scenario, if the party gets in here into this hut at the same time as Big Mama Tonathorn, they're gonna need some potential hiding spots. So this is where I'm thinking that might be achieved. First they have to get in here without her noticing, and then they could possibly get behind those curtains. I know it's kind of a crummy way to display it, but basically with those curtains there, if they put their mini here, we'd be saying, okay, you're concealed, you know? That's how I would run that. She also probably wants some more furniture, so on this wall, I'm gonna put just a quick little table. It probably has a candle with a little wick there, and maybe a book of some sort. So that's what that'll be. And then I think a similar table maybe can be put against this wall, a square sort of table. And now the reason I'm gonna populate this with a few more tables and things is because I want the idea to be, if they want to, the party might potentially be able to hide underneath some of this furniture. Again, in the event that they're in the hut at the same time as Big Mama. Now, I'm not saying that's even gonna happen, honestly, and usually it's really hard to plan for this crap. This is gonna be like her dining area, so she'll have another chair pulled up like right here. This is like not how this will likely go, is that the party's gonna like do everything as I expect, because that's rarely what happens. Here's like a little plate and a fork and a knife. So there you go. That's where she usually sits and has her meals. And then do I want something here? Maybe that'll do. It's I guess I'm gonna describe it when I'm talking as like a bunch of moss and crap will be hanging from the ceiling, and it's gonna be very like dimly lit inside. And so I think I can paint a picture that makes it seem a lot more busy than this illustration looks. But okay, actually no, now that I'm looking at this, I want one more thing. I want something here, so I'm gonna do, I think, just one more little coffee table here. I'll put a coffee table here. What's on it? Some sort of blends of spices, jars of spices here. So a couple of jars there where she mixes her little potions, things like that. Okay, so that basically does it. Now, I'll have to do some thinking about plotting, like, okay, how is it gonna work when she hears the people coming? Does she immediately go to the windows? Does every 6 seconds or every 12-second interval, does she switch windows? I actually really like the sound of that as I'm saying it aloud. So I'm guessing that they won't be able to get too close to her hut without her inspecting, or without her suspecting. And so she'll probably go here, look outside, hut, hut, hut here, look outside, hut, hut, hut here. And because of the safety of her home, she probably won't be too anxious to leave, but she will be peeking out all of these areas looking for them. And maybe she'll be sending out a few warning spells. So I'll read up on those fire spells one more time and just make sure I have a decent idea of how to run those. I also think that because it's a Nagpa, let me go back to her stats right quick. Let me see, Nilbog, Nagpa's over here. Okay, at will, detect magic. Okay, mage hand. Maybe when she detects magic, she'll be able to detect the magic of this mythical swan boat they took in. So even though the swan boat hide, it didn't work, so it sets her off. Something is going to make sure a Big Mama Ton of Thorn is aware that the party's approaching. And so there's a few ways to go into this. Maybe when she's distracted here, they can really quick pop into this window. They could come in through the back, slip in through the door. Some way they're going to have to get that coronet. And then if, in the worst case scenario, they alert her and she spots one of them, she might start charging outside. And then it starts being time to focus on that stat block. So anyway, I hope that was helpful. Basically, the moral of this story is get yourself some wrapping paper and a couple of Sharpies, and then you can really do a lot. Even how as crappy as this looks, it makes the sessions a lot more fun, and it's way more easy to visualize what the heck's going on than it would be with just the theater of the mind. Even if you're working with the original Monsters Manual, this method would work just as well. So open it up to a random page, and let's just say you're doing a green dragon, and well, I think they even have layer actions. Blue dragon's lair, green dragon's lair. So that's a bad example. Let's say you're doing a Helmed Horrors, ancient, ruined throne room. All you have to do is check out his special abilities. Okay, he's magic resistant, he's immune to spells. He's got a multi-attack with a long sword. Okay, so let's give him a layer that's more like a long hall potentially, so it's really hard to run by him without being in range of his long sword. Instead of making a hut, make it like a longer area, or make it much more congested and cramped, so it's hard to get by him without taking a lot of damage. Stuff like that. Or, you pop over to a Marrow. Okay, let's look at his abilities. He can harpoon, he can claw. Okay, right here, the harpoon's within 20 to 60 feet range. Well, with our Nagpa, she had a huge range, so I was able to really open up the map there, because even if you're all the way out here, I'm pretty sure you're within range of 120 feet for one of her fireball spells. Not so with the Marrow, so that's another one. You could make a similar kind of hut, but make sure it's cramped enough for him to always be effective when battling. So I hope that helps. You just look at your monsters and build the land accordingly. This does a lot of the work of like the logistics of the battle, and then your writing in your notebook is going to do a lot of the work of painting the picture. So good luck out there to all my DMs. I hope that helped. Drop a comment if it did help, or if you have even better ideas or other cheap ideas to be an effective DM, and I appreciate your time.